and I have the honorable pleasure of talking with Michael Panzarotto. As he lists on his Instagram page, he's an actor, a rewriter, a gourmet cook, an acerbic, and country squire. So get ready to listen to what he has to say about all that, his acting career, and so much more. So relax and enjoy my talk with Michael Panzarotto. Hello, everybody. My name is Edward S. Redcar, and welcome to my YouTube channel talk show. Today, Michael.
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good, good. It's good to have you on my show. We've done a lot of things together, and this is sort of like the first one-on-one via Zoom, but not in person, to kind of have a good conversation and have a lot of fun. So.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for being on here. Yeah, it's really an extreme pleasure to have you on here. Yeah, yeah. I usually start my show with asking my guests how they got interested in acting, and I'll kind of leave that off to the side for now. And what I really wanted to ask you, and what really intrigued me about what you listed on your Instagram page is, I wanted to ask you that first. And in your description on your Instagram page, you don't only list yourself as an actor, but also as a rewriter, a gourmet cook, which I found interesting. But you also mentioned being an acerbic and country squire. And I was just wondering if you could, I mean, it intrigued me so much there. I just wondered if you could kind of elaborate on that.
Elucidate that a little. So it's interesting. That is sort of a nod from me to all of my heroes and their influence on my life. Well, not all of them, but quite a few of them. So as far as being a gourmet cook, I do a lot of the cooking at home. Not because my wife can't, but because I like to cook. And I know what I like. And I try things, and everybody likes their things that in the family that they have me make on holidays, especially. My mother likes certain dishes for her birthday or Mother's Day every year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
And I've been doing it since I was in high school. I started to like to fool around in the kitchen. My grandma was an extraordinary cook. She was both of them, but my mother's mother was a very, very good from scratch cook.
Okay.
And there was a time when she was making her own noodles or pasta. But the most extraordinary thing was my grandfather, my mother's father, was also a very good cook. He would make the one that I really remember. He would take potatoes and slice them and boil them a little to soften them just a little bit. Then in a big pan with olive oil, pepper, garlic, green peppers, and hot dogs. And he would fry it all up. And it was the most delicious. You can put anything in it. He would get rid of leftovers that way. But it was delicious. Nobody, we all know the recipe. Nobody can equal it. So that he would put it in and look at his watch and say, it'll be done by this time, and every time.
Okay.
Beautiful. But anything he made was beautiful.
Right.
So I love that. Vincent Price and Jonathan Harris were big cooks. I have actually two of Vincent Price's cookbooks.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because some of them are some of the recipes are from the set, that era. So you get things that you wouldn't much anymore, but it's great. One that he and his wife put together, Mary, and then the other was just him. So there's that. As far as being a country squire, that's because we live in the country, and I'm an elegant gent.
That statement right there, that intrigued me. I usually ask about how you got into acting, but I found that so intriguing. I says, I got to change things up. I got to make this different. I got to ask him that first. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I grew up in Southwest Baltimore, which is city, in the city. And we moved out into a suburb or a different county, but an area called Westminster in Carroll County, Maryland. And it's very, very country. And so, a little bit of the elegant street but a little bit of the elegant city mouse coming to the country. I'm also a huge Anglophile, huge Anglophile. So when I saw the, I thought Squire. That sounds. It also reminded me a little bit of the Quiet Man, Squirey Danaher. So I put that in everything. I see myself as sort of. I see myself also as a very much out here, a very an aberration, maybe. I don't because of the interests out here are very. There's no theater here. I have to
Oh, okay, okay,
about 30, 40 miles in
okay,
Baltimore to act in theater. And
okay,
other than thank, we've got none,
okay.
knocking on wood as we speak. I'm touching the wood that we have Zoom theater now. That's
Right.
been great. Uh,
Thank goodness for Zoom, right?
uh,
Especially during COVID. That's how myself, that's how I returned to acting. Everything was shut down, so that was the only way to get back into it. Yeah,
it was a godsend
it was. It was.
because not only did it give us all the ability to get back out and do it, but I've made so many friends, so many new
Oh,
friends,
yes. Oh,
accidentally by doing these Zoom parts.
yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting because I have worked in theater projects where you go in and the cast clicks and they become very, very close. And then always the curtain comes down. You get to be good friends, curtain comes down, the show
Right,
is over, everybody goes their way. You try to keep up, but the actor's life is very
right,
busy.
right, right.
And then I've been in shows where the cast, it was just a job, and you went in and you said hello and you were pleasant and all that, but no real, no real relationship
Right, no
formed.
camaraderie. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but these Zoom things, it was an
It
instant.
is. And it is I mean, it's amazing, like when you meet someone in person, like over the summer, Chocolate Kea,
Yeah,
who we both worked with before. She was filming her movie in the Boston area. So Nick Parlare, who I've also had as a guest, and also Chocolate as well. Both of us went to Boston to film that, and so to film our scenes. And
I thought that was wonderful, by the way.
yeah, oh, thank you, thank you.
That was
Yeah,
great.
and so that was the first time that I had met either Chocolate or Nick in person. It was all Zoom, just like you and I talking here. And we first met before the filming. We met in, like a coffee shop in the area to get acquainted and everything. And it's like, as soon as we met, it's like that.
Right.
The only other time we ever seen each other was like this and it's like we knew each other all our lives. And like you said, Zoom is a marvelous vehicle for, bringing people and audiences together. Yeah.
When you count the distance between some of us, there's Andrew in Maine, I think, in Boston, yourself,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Anna in England, Anna Harwich, a brilliant actress in England,
Yes. Yes.
to work with while she was in England here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something about this safe little box that makes everybody kind of lower their defense a little bit. And so when you get to there's nothing really there holding you back from being chummy. And
Right. That's true. That's
you get
true.
friends right away and you maintain it. Anna and I talk daily, pretty much. And then Annie gone, and Nick and Alex and I are all working on something together. So we meet once a week.
Okay.
Never met in person. Well, Nick went to see Anna,
Yes, I heard that. Yes. Yeah.
but it's been lovely. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah, yeah. In fact, you were talking about meeting people from all over. There was one production I was in with Alpha New York City, of which you've been in productions too, and it was Lady Windermere's Fan. They put that on, what, maybe a year or two ago, and we actually had one actor zooming like all the way from South Africa. And that was like the farthest away that I've ever worked with anybody on this medium. So, with Alpha NYC, either your performances start like either at 8 or 9 o'clock, whatever cast A or cast B you're in. And so it was, say, if our show started 8 o'clock at night, it was like, I forget the time difference, but it was something ridiculous. Like he was starting his show at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I says, wow, I says, that's dedication. Somebody that's up that late or that early, whatever way you want to put it, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that's insane. But I mean, if
Something
the
about
shoe was
that.
on, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would do it too. I mean, just
Oh, sure.
like, because we love it so much.
Love it. The experience is always,
It
something
is.
to take away.
It
And
is.
always get better. It never leaves you worser.
No, 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 not at all.
It's
No.
not, it really is grand.
Yeah,
Amazing. Social media, all that amazing.
it is. It is. Yeah, yeah. The miracles of technology, like they call it. But,
Magic.
yeah. Well, since we've since you've answered my intrigue on those questions, now I can go. Now I can start the regular way. Now I can start the show the regular way. What got you interested in acting? Tell us about that. What triggered you and says that's what I want to do?
Well, I have to say, must surely have been Lost in Space. And that Jonathan Harris, in no small measure, because first of all, as a kid, I could never put my finger on what I wanted to do. I remember, I loved sci-fi and I loved this and I loved that. And my uncle, I loved robots, and my uncle would say, "Why don't you be a scientist and build robots, and one day you can maybe have your own, and they'll do whatever for you." And I can remember thinking, and then said astronaut. Why don't you be an astronaut? And I remember thinking, I don't want to let you go through all that. I want to pretend to be,
Right.
all that. And so there was that. But then Jonathan Harris, I had read, and always this was germinating, wanting to be up in front of people and all that. But I had read an interview with him in Starlog magazine. And Mike Clark, if you're listening, it was a good article. Anyway, he talked about his life early and on the New York stage and how he was a pharmacologist and how he got involved with theater and then on the television, on the TV and all that. And the way he handled himself and the way he spoke and how he carried himself and all of that, I could picture him walking off from the sides of the stage and knowing that I thought I want that. Me. So it was him. And it kind of germinated, I guess, as it does for everybody over time, because it became a thing of speech for me. There's a very strong dialect here in Baltimore that I got rid of. I heard these guys, Jonathan Harris. I'm a little bit of a throwback actor. So my style is a little bit antiqued, I guess, but I like those guys, Price, Harris, Cushing, Webb, how they speak and how they carry themselves. And as I got older, thank God for Patrick Stewart, because
oh yes, yeah.
the roles that I got were on account of him. There were ways of maintaining that and still being not a caricature of a person, but
Yeah. You since you talk about Patrick Stewart there, my favorite phrases that he uses in Star Trek is when he addresses the second in command, when he says number one.
Oh yeah,
that always got me, number one.
number one.
And then the other one that always gives me chills when he says it, or even when I think about it, when they're ready to take off, he says engage, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. That number one, I call my oldest son number one all the time because I said you were the firstborn. Not that he's more important than the other one, or nothing to do with import, just the order of things. So I used to call him number one.
Right.
Time for bed, number one. Yeah, that engage is pretty cool.
So when you preface number one with time to go to bed, you were talking him not to get too high on his horses by being called number one, right?
You got to be real careful with that stuff. You don't want to give any false impressions.
That's right.
One is this eye and one is that eye. Sides of the heart. But you know what? I liked that and I thought, well, he was the oldest, he's the first in line, so in birth order, so that's
right.
I called him number one for long. But I like that, and I did like engaged too. There's something about his voice and presence that makes that really
It
cool.
is. I mean, it's so regal, you know. I mean, even hearing his voice, you don't even have to hear him speak. It's just like you respect him just in the way he speaks, you know. I mean, it's say, okay, I know my place. You're up here. I'm not worthy. Keep,
Right.
keep talking. I'll listen.
I could do a little of that. I like that. Yeah,
And yeah,
indeed. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm. So that was pretty much it for the acting. Where I got into that was Jonathan Harrison, no small
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. Well,
And
there's one more thing that I have to ask you about your Instagram statement on your profile page. Is that you mentioned that you're a rewriter, and I was just wondering what things have what type of things have you rewritten?
oh God, never to the point where I force myself onto a director or push beyond my limit. But if I feel, I guess most people do. I don't claim to be a writer, but I'm an excellent rewriter. If I feel that there's something crucial happening and I feel like the dialogue isn't giving that, then I quickly write it. And I'll take it to them and I'll say, I think it works. Or sometimes you have to be bold and do it. We don't really, with the Zoom stuff, have time, but when you're working on something on stage, you can run through it in a scene. Make sure that you don't do anything that derails the other guy, and you might want to prepare the other guy or gal. But do it and see if the director likes it, they'll go with it. Like I played Van Helsing in Dracula,
Okay.
and that meant a lot to me, that part, because he was Cushing. You know? I wanted to, these guys, these were my. So there was a scene, there's a really great scene. It was the original script, the one that Lugosi did. And, you know, so that's a little dated. And there's a scene, a wonderful scene where, you know, they're piecing together what's happening. Van Helsing is on the scene and they're trying to keep Lucy alive. And Dracula knows that Van Helsing is kind of getting close. So he comes Van Helsing is exhausted at this point. He's in the study or the den, and Dracula comes in. There's a confrontation there where Dracula kind of lets him know. And there are some interesting parts that were missing from that. Like there's a point when Dracula says, "You're a very wise man for one so young." You know, because aesthetically, you're looking at the characters as Van Helsing is the old man, and Dracula is now the young lover and all of that, and he's the romantic, and that was potent. You know, I wanted people to realize that really this guy is super. You got to remember he's supernatural. So Van Helsing is the young guy in this part. Uh, that I had that put in. There's a part when he's pushing the envelope with Dracula and
Okay.
big mirror. In the movie, he's holding a little cigarette case, and that's infamous in vampire movies. But in the stage play, there's a big mirror, and he's looking over it and says to him, "I was looking in the mirror. It reflects the whole room, and yet I cannot see." And at that point, Dracula can either come at him or whatever. So we threw a lamp.
Oh,
So it worked. It amped up the whole conflict got amped up. He threw something at me in his, like, you know, in the movie he knocks the case out of his hand. Lugosi slaps it out of his hand. But you know, in this amped things up a little bit, and so I put that in. Wrote that whole thing over again. I also wrote violence in it. Um, there was Peter Cushing. I think the original Dracula played like Jonathan Fritz said, like a ballet. If you look at it, it's very slow moving, it's very elegant and graceful, and it doesn't have a lot of charge. Whereas the Hammer films did, and so because they had a jolly good fight, so I put that in a little bit of a fight over a leaping over a couch and all to get away from Dracula. But so I did that.
well,
In
it never hurts to put a little bit of extra action in anywhere.
no. And the most recent was when we did Christmas Carol with Alpha, and I asked and Andrew's a wonderful director.
He is, absolutely, no doubt about it.
So the
Yeah.
actors act and do their thing, and I said to him, "Do you mind if I I was the ghost of Christmas Present. There are some lines in here that are very important to this because you were in that. Do you remember there was a very short?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was the ghost of Christmas Present too.
It goes so
It
fast.
does. It really does.
There was a whole scene when he, which is the most to me important to his change besides the death, is this where the whole thing about him passing judgment on man, if man thou art in form and not armament. Next time forbear that wicked cant until you know just who the surplus population is and where it lies. Can
Mhm.
it be that you are even more worthless than the millions of this poor man's dear child? That was a lot of that was missing, and I was like, no, 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 this has to be put in here, or this, you're going to lose half of the
Half,
cathartic that changes him if you don't.
yeah, half of the meaning. Right, right, right.
So that was lovely. But I do that all the time. And we try, I'm also a big remaker. There's a lot of, you know, getting down on movies being rebooted and remade and all. And I agree unto a point. The thing is when with this stuff, you know, you're growing up, you're watching it like, ooh, wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be cool if? The story has to evolve over time. And so I had rewritten Fright Night, which is one of my favorite movies. They redid it, and it was just I didn't like it. I mean, it's not a bad movie, and David Tennant is marvelous, but they made Peter Vincent, who was made under a certain with a certain ideal. I mean, the name screams it. He was made into like a Chris Angel Vegas magician, and I thought, how could we do it so that Peter Vincent would be relevant and still maintain who he was? So I kind of penciled about the characters being kids, and one of them wants to be wants to be just like Cushing and Price,
Okay.
famous Gothic horror film star vampire killer, which was me as a kid. And so, you know, he makes his friends make all of these movies with him and cheap, you know, homemade films about vampires. And then they meet a real life, you know, one comes to town. And in a moment, you know, you know, his friends are brave and he's frightened and he finds strength in the character. Because I thought that would be great for the first Fright Night. And then they destroy that vampire. And then the second could be them as adults
Hmm.
and sort of, you know, what damage happened to some of them. One of them went mad, and I had one of them.
Right.
Vincent goes on to be an actor.
Yeah.
You know, he's
So
always
yeah, sort of
so,
like the future effects of the actions that are happening
vampire
now.
movies don't typically is although King did a good job in the one with the clown, but I thought that was really involved. But
Okay.
a lot of times these horror films they end, and then when they come back, people are necessarily no worse for their wear. Um, you very rarely see people having gone experience or having changed their religious philosophy or something like that. So
Yeah,
I thought it would be great for a vampire.
yeah.
So I rewrote that. I haven't gone anywhere with it, but you know, I kind of I've
Uh,
been talking and then I got about that.
have you ever written and or performed like monologues, of your own creation, and had to rewrite them until you felt that everything was just the way you wanted, or maybe as close as you could get to the way that you wanted it?
Interesting that you should say that. I am currently with these conventions. I get called to do these conventions, and so the thing is to be Dr. Smith. How best to do that in a convention. A lot of times I end up helping with the line or like Dr. Smith or fighting with the robot or pulling people over to go this way or that way in line.
Right, right.
It's a wonderful way to actually incorporate him more by having a one-man show, either called Dr. Smith and Me or Dr. Smith, Jonathan Harris and Me, and talk about the influence and his career and then his influence on my career. And then, of course, Lost in Space. So we talk about him growing up and then Lost in Space and Urban Allen and then this little boy's impact. So I've been working on that for a little while. Trouble is, I don't want it to be too much about me. So I have to make that. He did a really good, he did actually a one-man show in Australia.
Oh, really?
called
Okay.
Never Fear Smith is Here, and Lost in Space is the longest run show in rerun in Australian history. So it's very popular there
Oh, I
still.
didn't,
Knocking
yeah,
on
I
wood.
didn't realize that.
So he took it there and he did it there for a little while. And so I'm working on that because I'm actually being encouraged to maybe go there right before the pandemic. There was talk of me coming down.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So yes, I am working on that. Um, I wouldn't mind because I'm always doing these readings. Doing something like a traveling master of the macabre, maybe performing a couple of things on a one man. Telltale Heart's a big one. That would be fun, one man.
I've since you bring that up, I've noticed a lot of different posts of yours, either on Instagram or Facebook, about just what you've talked about. Since you mentioned, since you brought it up, I'm glad that you did up about the different things that that you want to create out of that genre of art there. So that's another big interest of yours, right? Horror and the whole um, spectrum of horror and old movies and old movie actors and all of that, right?
Oh God, yeah. Well, that started with this guy. My dad and mom were young when they had me, and so my father's youngest brother was 15 when I was born.
Okay,
So
okay.
my dad and I were there. I was about 4, helping my grandmother move, and my father found my uncle was an avid model builder, and he had the Aurora King Kong. You've probably seen it. He's got one arm out and one arm with Fay Ray.
Right, right, right.
And my father thought, well, this would be interesting. He'll probably really like this. And he brought it to me, and I was terrified, horrified. And it was, my dad was a very macho kind of guy,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
determined, I wouldn't go near it, that I was not going to be afraid of this toy. So it was an all day fight that extended not only from his mother's, but when we went to my mother's later in the afternoon, it went on there. And then suddenly, I don't even remember what it was. I took hold of it, and that was it. And it became monsters, and then sci-fi. The robot was the other. The robot from Lost in Space was my other.
Right, right, right.
I always say that he was probably my first true love. I still love the look of him, even though they have these new sleek robots on the series and all. There'll never be another. And I like the robots on Star Wars, and I like Robbie, which were brothers. They were made by the same guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Robot. I used to walk like Robot in the store. Walk up to ice machines and start fighting with ice machines.
Right, 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 right.
Those are the two. But I love the horror film and sci-fi. You can accomplish a whole lot creatively. Talk of the issues that are brought up in Star Trek, the political landscape and ethical things and all of that. And not that I would, but then the horror. And I also love the elegance. You watch those old movies with Rathbone
Yeah.
and Peter Cushing, and those men were men of a whole different. Peter Cushing would kiss a woman's hand.
Right, a whole different league of type of behavior. Yeah, yeah.
Basil Rathbone was one of the top 10 best swordsmen in the world.
Yeah, you're talking a little bit about your enthusiasm with horror and just kind of finish what you started to say before we started into this question here about all the different characters in the genre of horror that you're interested in.
Well, I like, as I was saying, Rathbone was a fencer. In fact, there's a movie with him, not in it, with George Sanders, where George Sanders couldn't pick up fencing. So if you look
Okay.
very carefully, you'll see that it's made up Rathbone doing the fighting.
Okay. Okay.
I also very much admire Cushing and Rathbone, their physicality. So, the son of Frankenstein, Rathbone grabs a chain and swings down and kicks the monster into the.
Right. Right. Right.
And Peter Cushing's very famous scene is him wrestling with Dracula and then running across the tabletop and jumping up in the air, ripping down the curtains. I admire that kind of thing because it was extending what was on the page and decided it made it more fun. It was a good fight. These were good, fights. So I like them. The way they dressed, the way they spoke, you know.
Mhm.
Horror, there's a cute little meme that says Vincent Price's face, and he says, ski mask and a machete, how cute. So I love that because I think that it's I think horror was done better when it was more elegant. Dark Shadows was extremely elegant.
Yes, yes, yes.
But the guy wore a cape and he was a great collision of two time periods. His 1700s and the 1960s. He had the suits, the Italian. But a lot of people don't realize is that the suits that he wore were very expensive Italian suits. Very they were not shabby.
Right, right.
They were what was in at the time, and they were extremely expensive. So
Yeah,
very best Italian suits.
yeah.
And
Very dapper, proper, and well dressed all the time, right?
I saw those movies, and we have a strong dialect here. And they say things like "hun" and "oh" and put this in the kitchen sink, and you're gonna take a shower, and things. And I remember hearing them speak as a kid, thinking, "I'm gonna talk like that." And then Jonathan Harris too. So I worked really hard to do the very best I could to. Once in a while, I get caught. One girl said to me one time I was on stage. She said, "Are you from Baltimore?"
Oh,
Yes.
she could just detect just a little bit left over. Okay.
She said no. Because it's true. I
What? Yeah.
knew. So
Now,
that
now, what makes you say that? Why would you ever say that? Right?
I do say one thing is that I'm very affectionate about my hometown. One thing that I was excited to keep was when my dad got older, rest his soul, he used to call young people, young ladies, and hun. That's a very Baltimore thing. Here you are, hun. Let me get that door for you, hun.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like a rite of passage. You hit a certain age, you can do that. Now it's fallen on hard times, but I was excited about that.
yeah, yeah.
So there we are. That's the
Well,
hard.
yeah. Well, since you've just mentioned so much about Vincent Price,
Yeah.
I cannot let you go away from this show without doing your rendition of Vincent Price's lines in Michael Jackson's musical hit Thriller. Could you do that for us? Could you grace us with hearing that from you?
With extreme pleasure. Um, Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hours close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's mate. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hound of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. Now I'll give you the extended version. The demons squealed in sheer delight. It's you they spy, so plump, so ripe. For though the groove is hard to beat, yet still you stand with frozen feet. You try to run, you try to hide, yet no more sun you'll ever see. For evil reaches from the crypt to crush you in its awesome grip. The foulest stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grizzled ghouls from every tomb are closing, seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver. For no mere mortal can resist the evil of I love that. Great laugh.
Bravo, bravo. Yeah, yeah,
That's my favorite.
yeah. When you accepted my invitation to be on my show, I says if I do not ask him any other questions, I have to ask him to do the Thriller. Since
What a
Halloween is just a week or so away, I says I have to include that in there. So
Oh, I love you for it. Thank you.
thank you. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
What a worthy, what a thing for I mean, now generations know who he is from one rap part.
Yes,
You know,
yes, yes. That's, yeah,
I would say that to my kids, and when
yeah,
the people you like are immortalized by doing,
that's right.
I make
That's
fun of
right.
you.
I mean, new generations probably don't have an interest in seeing like the old time movies with
Oh,
the way they used to dance, but something like you just mentioned when Vincent Price steps to the forefront and actually participates in something that is being done, in a modern platform and in a modern creation. The youth love them. Then it's like, where have you been all these years? And it's like, well, he's always been here, but he just hasn't been doing things that, you're familiar with, in the arts, theater, or, whatever like that. But yeah, so no, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I mean, I was just sitting back with the rest of the audience, just taking it,
good.
just taking it all in. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
One other thing that I wanted to ask you is that uh, you originally uh, had a post on Facebook where you uh, well, the only way that I can put it is that you're throwing your hat in the ring to be the co-host for the popular TV show Svengoolie, and in one of your posts, you kind of alluded to the fact that you want your role to be mostly after Peter Vincent auditioning for this part. So my question is to you, or two-part question is, have you auditioned for it already, like submitted a tape? And what what inspired you to want to throw your hat in the ring for this?
That's what. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Well, I did submit. It's interesting. I hadn't heard anything of it, and my friend Tom, who is the actual coordinator for the Lost in Space presence and a lot of these conventions that he owns, the Jupiter 2 flight deck and all this stuff. He's been on MeTV recently on that program with the antique with Blair from Facts of Life.
Yes, yes, yes.
His house, looking at the robot and the flight deck and everything. He's got a lot of stuff. Anyway, he was in New York City for Comic Con with Marta,
Oh,
who was a dear. I have to say, Billy Mooney and Marta Kristen, shout out. They're always sweet to me, very sweet. He wrote me when he came back and said, it's a shame that you couldn't make it to this Comic Con because they are, MeTV is looking for a co host for Svengoolie. He said, and I think that with all these voices and just who you are, I think you would be a grand candidate. You could have auditioned.
right, right.
You need to look into it and get into it. So I looked it up, and he actually also sent me the thing. So they're doing like I guess a search, and you send in your tape of you. So initially we shot a couple different takes of me in persona, and then as I read it, it had to be 30 seconds long. It had to be an intro to self and why you think you're a spawn of Svengoolie. And I said to my wife, I think we're going to drop the persona. I think we're going to do me and why I think I would be a grand candidate for it, because I am not necessarily spawn of Svengoolie, but of horror. I am
Right.
the direct product of a lifetime of love of Gothic horror. And so I said that, and I have a friend of mine made me a replica of the box that Peter Vincent
I
carried.
seen that. Yeah, that was
That was really cool.
exact. Yeah, that
I, I had that behind me, and I just sort of said, "Hi, I'm from Baltimore. I grew up. Why am I the spawn? It's because I bloody well am." I said, "I grew up. I have 1,000. I said these reproductions of Miller movies that I've made with my friends, always playing Van Helsing. I played Van Helsing on stage. I played the inspector who hunts Mr. Hyde. I played
yeah,
Mr. Hyde. I have played several Cushing-like
right.
roles and Vincent Price-like roles in my time. And without having a hammer or an AI career, I am closest to, and I'm quirky and weird and eccentric like these horror hosts. And as a kid, I used to want to be. I thought, well, if I can't make it, as a full-on actor, maybe I could be a horror host. This is a teenage kid in the '90s, and they still existed back then. And then they went away, and I kind of like forgot about it. And then last year, my wife and I were talking about me doing a YouTube thing where I would get an old movie with, that didn't have rights issues, and then do that and having a little horror show of my own where I would talk about the movie and be dressed and all that kind of. And then this popped up, but I will tell you a very interesting thing about this. I don't know. I didn't know that I believe in all this crazy stuff, ghosts and stuff. But my best friend growing up, one of my best friends, there were two, and we've known each other. We knew each other since fourth and sixth grade. He actually passed. He always played the Christopher Lee part, always the vampire, always the villain in my movies. And he passed that Friday night into Saturday. And I find it extraordinary that when he passed, I was in Target and saw a preview for Fright Night 2 of all things popped up. And I thought, my God, that was in 1988. Why on that? Oh, would I see that?
Yeah.
And then I happened to go home the next day. I was home doing some things and online. And I saw Tom Holland, the original writer and director and producer of the original Fright Night movie, just put out a book on Fright Night. And I thought, my God, what timing. And then right after that, because we made Fright Night over and over and over.
Right.
I get a call about this Spanguli thing that was going down when he died. And he and I talked daily through his sickness. We talked daily, unless he was sick from chemotherapy. And he used to say to me, you're living the dream, you're doing your thing, man. You're playing Dr. Smith, you're getting Billy Mooney likes what you're doing. You're working with Marta Christian. He says, you just got to push. It's going to happen, man. So I thought, maybe you give me a little wink.
Yeah.
Give me a little push. So it's been extraordinary as far as the timing. But it's lovely. I'm having a ball. And it's not voting contest. Get on there and start emailing people that you want to be. The buddy of mine is actually going to be.
It looks like the stars are starting to align some way, right? For the destination.
I hope
that you're focusing on.
The love of it, it's not the money, but making a living off of it would be lovely.
Yeah.
So I'm also into audiobooks.
Yeah. Well, like I've always heard that, like even auditioning, like some people maybe consider auditioning not to be acting, but I heard a statement one time, and I forget, it was by, like one of the major actors. I can't exactly remember who it was at this time, but it was something like that. He considered auditioning acting. It's like, not only are you acting when you're on stage, but you're acting in an audition because you're acting for what, directors or casting people in this. You're acting, so you're doing what you love. It doesn't matter what platform it's on, stage or film or even an audition, you're acting. And
that's right.
As long, like you were saying, as long as you love what you're doing, that's not only half the battle, that's all the battle right there. Yeah.
We're in one of the few careers, well, any artist, I think, can say this, but we are definitely in one of the few careers where if you're viewed as sort of a not success, if you're not getting bang up bucks, you could have a career, from here to eternity and played all the parts and every part you've ever wanted to play. But if you don't have the house on Hilltop, they think you didn't. And it's not about the making it. What does that really mean? Did I touch somebody in the performance? I'm sure. I hope to hell we did.
Yes. Yeah.
There's that school you're always on. An actor is always on.
That's right.
Always doing in some way. And I follow, there's a guy, a very wise man, who I'm very attached to also, who once said, all the world is a stage and all the men and women are players. And I believe that. Everybody's acting at some point,
Oh, definitely,
you know, but we
definitely.
are all in the game.
Yeah, definitely, one way or another. Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe that's how, maybe that's how acting came to be. People realized, well, I'm acting a certain way in certain situations, but I really don't act that way normally.
Yeah.
Maybe I can make something out of this, and maybe who knows? Maybe that's how the Globe Theater started. You don't know, right?
Well, we are intrinsically, um, by our nature, geared to story, to telling, to performing, to listening. I mean, the word audience is audio. You're listening. You're not watching. It's a listening thing.
That's right.
You're and like if you look at it, story and acting has been passed down since man could draw on a wall. And Jesus, no matter what religion or whatever faith you are, he only used story to teach.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
always a parable. He was always going into parables about, this and that and the other, because it sinks in when it's through a story. And I think I learned the most about life in general from story, from seeing a movie, a well-done movie that makes you think. You watch a play, you listen to an audio book, or you listen to what they call a radio drama, and it changes you. So piffle on those other people.
yeah,
Give
yeah.
up.
I've always felt that, whether you're performing on a stage or in film, that uh, you might not know for the rest of your life who's out in the audience. You may never know their name, who they are, what they look like, but in some way you might be helping them getting through maybe a life crisis, a life decision. You may not ever know who they are, but in some way you're helping them, and that that sort I don't know about you, but that sort of gives me a satisfying feeling knowing that I might be help, maybe not, but I might be helping somebody with a decision or whatever. So
Do small things with great love, right?
right.
You're doing it with all your heart, and you really feel that it's a good work, it's a good thing, and you may be, like you said, you might be pulling some. And I think about me, as a kid, and thinking, that probably geared a lot of my life in a
Oh
more
yeah,
positive direction than some of my contemporaries in the city who got involved with other things and all
right,
that stuff. So,
right,
let me talk.
right. Yeah. And speak of telling stories. Um, I got to ask you about this. Well, in fact, it's something that we're both involved in a new project by Ben Tinsley and Anna Elizabeth Gant. She's producing it, and he's working with his son and his writing partner Jake Tinsley. And you've been cast in the role of Detective Herpes Lesneeze in Night Owl, and I also have a role in it, and you're sort of playing a supervillain, and you're my chief adversary, and I'm Oliveris tryptophan, and I was just wondering, like we've talked about your love of mysteries and horror and everything. Is that love of mysteries and horror in general, mystery horror category, is that what made you attracted you to that Night Owl project, to be in that project?
Well, I love the idea. It's a hoot, as has been. I love working with you all again. That was a big attractor. But so yes, I love this. Now going back to my friend. It was always the joke between us growing up that I loved Sherlock Holmes and he loved Hercule Poirot, but Ustinov playing Hercule Poirot.
Okay,
The
okay.
joke was that always I was more built similarly to play, or built better to play Poirot. Not that I'm heavy, but small and darker. And he was built tall and lanky like Sherlock Holmes. And I love Ustinov. And when I was asked to do this, my friend adored Ustinov. That was his favorite. is Jonathan Harris.
Yeah.
So I shot a text and said, I'm gonna do this piece for you, not for him, meaning dedicating it to him because of, him, because he got me turned on to Ustinov as a kid. And I said, this guy reads like a cute wow in one of the Ustinov movies. It's a fun kind of thing. So, but I love mystery. I own all of those, his version of the Poirot movies, from Death on the Nile all the way down to the 13. So it's
That's
about.
that's what I call dedication there, that you have
Oh,
all that in your collection. Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, too, when we were doing homes, I used to say something down like, I'm shooting this and I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking one day I might get to play Hercule Poirot, the other great detective. And sure enough, this is the closest I'll probably come.
Yeah.
So I love Lesnies too. He's kind of like me. He likes to dress nice and he's um, easily offended. He seems a little acerbic himself, and I like the cat and mouse thing and the nemesis thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's always good to have a little conflict in the stories. Otherwise, the audience would probably just kind of go like that, and it's like, okay, when is this over? We got to get some arguing or some conflict. Otherwise, we're out of this place. We're not going
I love the art, the one villain kind of, a one good guy who has a villain that he really spends his life fighting against. All of that, and I like that the two of them and how they seem to be with each other. And
Yeah, yeah.
plus the boy being a thing, there's that at the heart of it is a relationship between an old man and a little boy.
Right, right, right.
Who does that remind you of? So there'll be that play in there, and so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's great, and I do love history. Who
Yeah,
doesn't?
I know it. I know who doesn't love a good mystery. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
The Victorian ones are the best. London Fog and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got to throw some fog in there, otherwise you lose the whole atmosphere. You got to have some fog in there. Yeah, yeah.
Sam Spade to Nick and Nora was it
Sam Spade. Yeah, yeah.
Fog.
Columbo.
As a kid, I liked Quincy.
Quincy.
Remember?
Yeah, that was a good program. Yeah, Jack Klugman. Yeah.
Oh, I tell these people go nuts over NCIS, and I always say, you guys are way, way behind it. Quincy was solving mysteries off of dead bodies.
Yeah, yeah. Since you bring up Quincy and Jack Klugman, it just occurred to me that when him and Tony Randall, of course, many years before, when they both did The Odd Couple, it just occurred to me, it's like, who would ever thunk that Jack Klugman would one day play play a detective? It's like he must have had that in him inside him somewhere, and it's like, everybody always knew him for comedies and everything like that. So who knows? I mean, maybe it was just a part of him that never had a chance to come out.
You got to check out an episode of The Twilight Zone
Oh,
called The Price of Pip. I think it's called The Price of Pip with Jack Klugman and Billy Mooney.
I
And
talk about Rod Serling there. That reminds me of just, I don't know, maybe within the last, maybe week, not 2 weeks, but maybe last week, uh, his daughter posted like an old black and white photo of him. It was just sort of like a profile. I don't know if it was walking or typing at a typewriter or something, but I just happened to see that on Facebook. That's the first kind of post on Rod Serling. I don't know. I've never seen. I really don't see that much history about him. People posting old photos or old stories about him. But yeah,
he was a
even
genius.
though he didn't act, I mean, he was excellent at what he did. The mystery. Yeah.
I've never seen. I mean, they have tried countless times to reboot that Twilight Zone, and there is something that he brought to the table that cannot be equaled. I mean,
That's right.
they've
That's
done
right.
good ones. The one with Billy Mooney and Forrest. They brought that, and actually, his real daughter played his daughter in that.
Okay, I think that's probably the daughter that posted that photo then, yeah.
Oh, it's lovely. And but it's just they can write good stories. And M. Night Shyamalan has that kind of on occasion, that good twist that gets you. But
Mm,
just there's only one Rod Serling,
that's
and he
right, that's right.
left us way too young.
And
Oh,
talking about Rod Serling, and also uh, another artist that you admire, yeah. Did you ever see the episode of that? Just reminded, did you ever see the Twilight Zone episode that had Captain Kirk in it?
oh yeah, there's something on the wing, something. Right? The gremlin out there tearing the plate. Oh yeah, but it
Yeah.
was the one that was
In
the
fact,
Jack in
that
it.
was, if I can remember right, that episode. Um, he was, I don't know if in that episode, if he was supposed to be married to the woman in the scene with him or if it was a girlfriend of his, but they were both in a restaurant in this particular episode.
Oh yeah,
It's like the whole episode, the whole half-hour program, whatever, it was all about this one restaurant. And
that Jack in the Box thing with the devil's head.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That was crazy. I love Leonard Nimoy. I didn't know how much I liked him. I mean, I remember as a kid watching In Search of and Star Trek, and my favorite was Spock. I wanted to be Spock. He was stronger, he was smarter,
That's
he was
right.
cool, and all of that. But and I never missed In Search of, which could take a creepy turn.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But recently, I sort of rediscovered Star Trek in general. Um, when we got Paramount Plus, and Picard actually was watching Picard.
Okay.
Picard ended. I thought, well, now I'm in a Star Trek kick. I'll start with the original and work my way down. And boy, I didn't realize how much of I didn't know how much of Spock was him. He brought to like that whole that he brought into it, and everything about the Vulcan culture and people was all created by Leonard Nimoy. And sometimes I get a little. You watch some of the newer things with the Vulcans, and you're like, I don't think that's copacetic with the idea and all that kind of stuff. But it's they were great. They were nothing shy of those guys. Back, they really knew their craft.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, talking about all those science fiction horror shows, and you must have watched at one time or another Tales of the Crypt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
like it a lot.
I always liked the beginning of the program where they were like meandering through the cave and through the cobwebs and
The old house, to the old
yeah,
house.
it's like this. I mean, this is some great cinematography, all CGI generated and things like that. Still, it was, I don't know. It just fascinated me the way the beginning of the program, they would just take you on a journey through the cave there until you finally got to the host there. And I says, well, I says, okay. I says, now I've taken my weekly trip. Now I can sit back and enjoy the rest,
It was,
rest of the
it was
program. Yeah.
a interesting time in horror. I guess because I was young myself in that particular period in the 90s, in the late 80s and the 80s. And they did that, and it was around the same time that Dark Shadows had a revival.
Dark. They had a radio program on that too, right? Only the shadow knows.
Oh yeah,
Something like that.
who knows what lurks behind
Behind.
all of the shadow knows.
Yeah, only the
Uh,
shadow knows.
they
Yeah.
had a good run on some. They actually had a Horror Hall of Fame award program in the 90s, and I recorded it. That shows my age, but it was on videotape. It had, I remember they gave Vincent Price a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it
Okay.
was presented to him by Roddy McDowall,
Wow.
who
Wow.
played Peter Vincent. So it was really cool. Vincent Price was quite old by that point. And
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
Corey Ackerman, anybody in Famous Monsters of Hollywood, that was his magazine. He was a lifelong devoted fan of art. His
Mm.
house was like a museum of memorabilia. He had Lugosi's ring from Dracula and the cape, and he had the mummy's ring that Karloff wore. He had so much stuff, in his home. It was so cool to see. That was really interesting. And they had in between segments someone, a special effects artist, teaching you how to do certain things. Like you could make fake teeth with candy corn and gum and Skittles.
Right, right.
Pull out the pink Skittle and then put candy corn in. It was really cool.
In other words, the tricks of the trade the tricks of the trade are now disclosed. Now we know how we did most of that stuff, maybe not all, but most of that stuff. Yeah.
Another good one, if you like horror film, is you owe it to yourself to watch a movie called A Man of a Thousand Faces. The Man.
Yes, yes.
James Cagney plays Lon Chaney Sr., who is the father of horror and special effects and all that.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I mean, that's a great old movie. Nothing scary. It's just about his life, and Lon
Yeah.
Chaney Sr. is in it, the character. That's when he plays him very briefly. And that's a really good, worthwhile movie.
Well, Michael, I could talk to you about all different sorts of subjects for like the next 10 hours. I don't think we'd ever run out of topics to talk about.
I mean,
But unfortunately,
right.
uh, it's really, really been a pleasure having you on the show and talking to you about all your interests and your acting projects and your thoughts on different genres of the art of acting and film and stage and everything. And I just want to really sincerely thank you for accepting my invitation and for being on my show tonight.
Oh, golly, I'm really honored to have been invited, and I love this kind of stuff. It's always lovely to talk about one's interests.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was very great of you.
And I'll put a shameless plug in here. I look forward to working with you in Ben and Anna's Night Owl coming up sometime in the future. I'll say not to give too much away, but I look forward to working with you and Ben and Anna and Anna Harvich and everybody else there who I've known and worked with in the past and just enjoyed working with you so much. I figured let's do it all again. Let's do it again.
Yes, I'm super happy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It's gonna be great. Ben's an awesome writer. So is the boy.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Both of them.
The writing and not only the writing, but like the graphics and everything. I mean,
Oh yeah.
his son is really talented as well. He's like they say, his son's Jake is a chip off the old block, like they used to say,
But you want to kill him, right? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Teenager. God, awesome. That thing's wonderful.
Or like fathers would say to their sons, don't you get too smart now, don't you get too smart,
Too righteous. Don't tell me I don't love you.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, Michael, thank you once again. It's been a pleasure. And everybody, this is my talk show, my YouTube channel talk show here. And I've had the pleasure of talking with Michael Panzarotto today. And I wish everyone a good day. And we'll see you next time. And you'll just have to wait who I'll have on next year. So thank you, Michael, and everybody have a good day.
Good night.